Okay, so a bonded acrylic panel. What I want to do is go through what we need first. This is, you need masking tape, 1.5 to 2 inch. You need your Fletcher tool, which cuts the clear. Of course, you've got your acrylic, your pattern, your material. But I also use a black Sharpie, a red Sharpie, a marking pencil for the material. I've got my scribe tool. I've got a 2-inch clear ruler. You have your rhino glue and a clamp and a 2-inch ruler for cutoffs. So that's all that we need for making an acrylic panel on here. Now I have this mock-up made, which we'll get a close-up and get into, but this is what you would bring back from the boat. Okay, so if you don't know how to get to this point, you need to back up and you know, go through other classes or whatever you have to do to get to that point. So when I bring the panel back from the boat, this is what it looks like, and this is where we go from here to start figuring out how much fabric we want to border and exactly what the components are going to do to be configured on there. So let's get a close-up and we'll dive right into it. All right, so when you get the pattern on the table, the first thing that you need to do is, and this is your discretion, is identify what the finished component is going to look like on the bottom, the sides, and on the top. So I'm going to show you 3 different ways of making components. The minimum that you need here is 1 inch for a zipper to be sewn on. But what we're going to do is we're going to bond 3/4 of an inch, which we'll get into that. We're going to bond over 3/4 of an inch onto the clear, but I want 1 inch of soft fabric. So that's going to make our finished 1 3/4 inch finish on both sides. So that's 1 3/4 inch. Now down at the bottom, I want to have 2 inches of soft fabric below the clear line, and then 3/4 of an inch above for the acrylic. So this is going to make this you know what, I'm sorry, did I said 2 inches and 3/4 inches. So that's going to make this 2 3/4 inch finish on there. And then at the top, I also want to do the same as what we're doing on the sides, and that's going to be 1 3/4 inches. But keep in mind now, if you've got a big boat and maybe you've got a 5-inch valance that's going on the top, or a 2-inch or 3-inch or whatever you choose to do on here, but just identify what you want to do. And I use this clear ruler a lot of times for marking this stuff up, but I'm going to use a red Sharpie, and what we're going to do is draw out our actual cut line. So I'm going to come in 1 inch, and that's going to be our actual cut for the clear, and then we're going to bond 3/4 of an inch over. So this is going to make this a finished look of 1 3/4 inches on both sides and on the top. Okay, now down at the bottom here, you can either draw this black line out at the bottom if you wish to, but you have the snap line. Typically that's what I'll use, I'll use the snap line. So what I'll do is I'll come up 1 inch above the snap and put little hash marks above each one of the snaps. And then you take this clear ruler and draw that out like that. So you could either do it from this line up 2 inches or from the snap line. I find it's pretty consistent if you go off of the actual snap marks themselves. So now we have our red pattern for our actual cut, okay? All right, so before we start cutting this, I just want to reiterate again. Now, these pieces are your discretion. That's not a standard to have this 2 inches or 2 3/4 inches It is pretty standard for the 1 3/4 inches on the sides, but the top and the bottom are always going to be a little bit different depending on what you're doing on your boat. So, but once you've got it drawn out, you just simply put your clear down. Now you can do one of two things here. If you're not comfortable with being able to reach all of this, because these panels get pretty big and it's on your tugboat, you can come back and use a ruler and redraw these lines onto your clear, because it's got the film on there. And you know, if you're new, I would recommend that you do that. Go back and redraw these lines so that you have something to trace. That way you can move the clear around and not have to worry about it. I personally like to just take a weight bag, right, and just weight it down, and then I have the line on there already, so I can cut this out with my fletching tool without taking that extra step to cut this out. So you know what, I'm going to change my mind. I can hold this down and scratch this thing out and cut it, but I'm going to go ahead and retrace it, because I'll show you something that you should get in the habit of doing. Okay, so now this, I want to also write that this is the inside of this panel. For the component, it doesn't make much difference, but when you're making your construction, inside and outside makes a big difference. And we also need to have the inside, because we're going to fold the bottom edge of this fabric around, so there'll be a rough side on the inside and a nice finish on the outside. All right, so once you have that, you can move your pattern out of the way, and then let's turn this way. So if you bring the edge of your acrylic to the edge of the table, and you can take a clamp actually clamp that down to help you hold, and then all right, so I just went through that 5 times. That's what I like to do, is I like to see these things all go, scratch it 5 times. That way you make sure that you get a good cut. And now you just come over here and you can literally just snap this. And you take a razor knife and you cut the back side of the film off, and you've got one good cut. So let's do these little sides. All right, so the bottom of this, obviously you cannot use a ruler. So, you know, I'm gonna flip this around so I can go and give myself a little bit more room. This is just a custom cut. So you put some pressure on. Okay, so there you go. You have your panel is cut out, ready to go, and you know which side is your inside. Let's get to prepping this for the material. All right, so remember when I said that we want to have 3/4 of an inch of material overlapping to bond onto the clear. I'm going to take my scribe tool and set it so that it's at 3/4 of an inch. And now when you scribe, or when you cut this film off of this panel, you don't push very hard at all, because you can actually score that acrylic and make that a breaking point in the future for this panel. It will make a weak spot in it. So all you want to do is make sure you just lightly just cut, so you're just cutting through the film. You're not really scoring the acrylic at all. Sometimes this stuff can be kind of a pain in the butt. There it goes. This works out nice because that gives you a very good edge to mark out your material so it's exactly in the right spot. Okay, so now I'm going to flip this over. I'm going to go ahead and pause. You don't need to see it. I'm going to flip this over and cut the film off the outside piece.